Do svidania, comrades. Today is glorious day for socialists everywhere. Today we have honor to look at mighty collectivist achievement. From glorious October Revolution to defeat of fascist pig dogs. Grandiose communist fleet has literally no achievements. Is almost as pathetic as Somalia Air Force. What sick men sent purely inferior Marxist designs to fight in real war is crying shame.
What's up everyone, I'm Eldridge, and today we are going to take a look at the Soviet destroyer line that is going to be added into the game in just over 2 weeks. Now I'm going to do this one a little bit different than I did the German cruiser one, and I'm going to give you an opinion piece right at the start. And I'm going to come right out of the gate and say that I think these are all bad. There's maybe one ship in this entire line that measures up to its peers in any significant way. And even that one isn't exciting. We'll be going through them one by one as usual, of course, but instead of saying, this is utter and complete wankery, unworthy of even being called anything but a dank parody meme of the worst destroyer you could ever imagine, and it should feel bad 8 times, I only have to say it once. Now why do I think that? Well, I think that because the theme they have chosen for these destroyers is just not good. They have chosen to make the Soviet destroyers pure gunboats. Now we already know gunboats because some of the American destroyers are like that, and we'll talk about them in detail when we get to them. But in general, the whole gunboat thing doesn't really exist in the way that people think, and is definitely not as good as people seem to think. And the real problem is that these ships completely focus on that one thing, and they don't really focus on it well either. So instead of getting 9 cool new versions of the Grammy, we got this lot. And I would like to put forward one more point before I go into detail with any of the ships. Because I'm sure that once I start actually talking about the ships and why I hate them, there are going to be a bunch of people who are going to think exactly this. And so I'm going to talk about it right now so that you already know what my opinion on this is and you don't have to angrily answer in the comments before watching the entire video. This game is based on making experience and credits. That is it. That is pretty much the entire premise of this game. Just like the other wargaming titles and just like so many other of these progression free-to-play games, it's all about making experience and credits so that you can advance through the tiers. There are currently 4 ways in the game of making experience and credits: damaging other ships, sinking other ships, capping points, and gaining medals. No, shooting down planes doesn't count in any significant way, it's a waste of time. And there is no bonus for captaining shitty, underpowered ships. And there is no bonus for being a good sport or helping your team. The game is entirely built on an incredibly selfish system. It's all about the damage that you do, the ships that you sink. And that is the entire goal of the game, is to improve your account, to unlock new ships, to have fun of course, but losing isn't fun, and being in the bottom 5 of the team, also not all that fun. And this is why I completely disregard arguments such as, it's a support ship, or it's a niche ship, or it has a unique playstyle. These are nonsensical arguments because really all you're saying there is this ship is not as good as other ships, it is not competitive, and you are grasping for straws trying to make it relevant, when it is clearly not relevant. Sure, you can still have fun by just gimping around and playing a ship that you visually like. All of that has no bearing whatsoever on their power level. It takes so much damn time to tier up in this game. Why would you dick around with crappy ships that will frustrate you so much that you will want to buy free experience, to free XP your way through them, to get even more shitty ships? I don't understand why anyone would do this, even if it's like the coolest ship that you've ever seen, or it's your favorite ship from when you were a child. You can like the look of these Russian destroyers, they can be your favorite ships ever, but they're still fucking dog shit. So if you want to grind them, go right ahead, but waste your time at your own peril. I have warned you, these ships suck. And now let's get stuck in and see exactly why I think that is. Alright, first off we're going to take a very quick look again at Tier 1, just in case that you haven't seen my other video on the German cruisers where I already talked about these new Tier 1 ships. I'm going to just quickly go over them. I think both the Hermelin and the Orlan are really good additions to Tier 1. I think both of them follow a little bit more in the footsteps of the Hashidate, in that they're small, they have smaller caliber guns, they have high rate of fire, but they are faster than the Hashidate, and in case of the Orlan, even a little bit more maneuverable. So that high rate of fire, fast nippy playstyle works a little bit better on both the Hermelin and the Orlan. I think both of them are great, and I cannot wait to play the Orlan at tier 1. I think it's a great ship. Now we come to the destroyers, and we start with the Starajevoi. Now it does have the smallest turning circle, and it does have the best rudder shift time, but it has almost no hit points. It has 3 102mm guns, which is even less of an armament than the Sampson has, given it has a higher rate of fire, but you're going to have a very hard time doing your damage with these guns. But you will have to do your damage with these guns because your torpedoes have 3 kilometers range. Oh my god. Anyone who has ever played the Sampson or the Wix before it was buffed should know that 4km torpedoes or 4.5km torpedoes are already really bad. They are so bad. And having only 3 kilometers, it's impossible. It's impossible to make anything happen with these torpedoes on a regular basis. They are so incredibly situational. And yay, you get 9 of them. Ah, that's so many. Isn't it cute? No, it's not cute. It's ridiculous. There's nothing you can do with these torpedoes, especially now that they buffed the accuracy of battleships and generally all ships below 3 kilometers range. Why would you play this ship? It's ridiculously bad. And on top of that, while it has okay DPS for its guns, and even an alright range, it has a 40-second turret traverse time. Because now you are spending so much time pre-turning your turrets ahead of time before you can shoot it. It's awful. There's nothing good about the Starajevoi. I really don't like the Sampson all that much. I think the Umikaze is the absolute king of tier 2, and the Sampson is rather weak. The Starajevoi is even worse. Quite a bit worse at that. And we come to tier 3, and it's pretty much exactly the same with the Jetski. Because at tier 3 we have the Wakata K, a great destroyer. The Wix isn't super amazing, it just received a buff however, so now it actually has usable torpedoes. Before one of the last patches, the torpedoes on the Wix were horrifyingly bad, but now they're okay-ish. 5 kilometers is still rather tight, but there are a lot more situations where you can use them because they have a decent speed of 56 knots. But the Jetski still has the exact same shitty 3km torpedoes. And people were freaking out because it has 5 launchers of 2 torpedoes. That's 10 torpedoes at the same time at tier 3. Oh my god, it's so overpowered. No, it really isn't. It's complete garbage. And it is complete garbage for the exact same reason that it is garbage on the Starajevoi. Still 40-second turret traverse speed, which once again renders your guns practically unusable. But the absolute worst thing, and something that I think is really worth mentioning, think about what that means, that it has 5 center-mounted torpedo launcher systems. That means this ship is really long. This ship is about double the length of the Wakata K. It's fucking Longcat the Destroyer. I don't even. And coming to tier 4, we're now in Soviet territory with the Easyas Love. And finally we have a ship that has sort of half-usable torpedoes at least. 5 kilometers range still is rather bad, but it is much better than the 3 kilometers we had to play with for 2 tiers already. And now the fact that it has 3 torpedo launchers of 3 torpedoes each can actually be pretty good, because you can do quite a bit of damage with that. However, do remember that we're now at tier 4, and so we're comparing this to the Isokaze and the Clemson, who are both rather good destroyers. The Easyas Love now has 5 guns, but they're still only 102mm in caliber, which is the exact same caliber that the Clemson has, but the Clemson with its upgraded guns actually has 2 guns per turret, which brings it to a total of 8 guns. And it has a much better turret traverse time. So you're outgunned by the Clemson, and the Clemson can use its guns much better than you can. And your torpedoes are nowhere near as good as the Isokaze's torpedoes, and they're not even as good as the Clemson's torpedoes. You're really just a shitty version of the Clemson, especially because the Easyas Love is one of the only Soviet ships that is actually slower than its peers. At 31.9 knots, ugh, at tier 4, that is really harsh. If you're the bottom tier, you are gonna have a hard-ass time catching up to anyone or running away from them. Ugh, gross. I mean, at least I guess Wargaming took one bit of feedback to heart, that the tier 2 to 5 destroyers are too strong, and so they made really, really garbage destroyers for tier 2 to 5. So good job, Wargaming, you did it! And now we come to tier 5 and hey, look, it's the Gniewny. And what is the Gremyashi? Yes, the Gremyashi is a Gniewny class destroyer. So these ships are pretty much exactly the same, so they should perform the same, right? Nope. The Gniewny is a tiny bit faster, but has a much worse turning circle and a much worse rudder shift time. It also has a worse detection range and a worse turret traverse speed, and it has garbage torpedoes. Welcome to Russian torpedoes. These torpedoes right here are going to be your friends for the next 3 tiers. Enjoy! Because what we really needed and wanted is the Gremyashi's torpedoes with half the range. Yeah, that sounds amazing. Okay, they're a little bit faster, but I mean seriously, look at this ship. You are never going to get close enough to use these fucking torpedoes. We're at tier 5. You are going to meet tier 6 and 7 ships. Who the hell are you going to sneak up on with your 7 kilometers detection range to use those freaking torpedoes? I mean seriously, all we got is a worse version of the Gremyashi. Why the hell is the premium ship so much better than the regular one? Obviously I don't even have to compare it to the Minakaze or the Nicholas, because it doesn't even hold up against its sister, the premium ship. Absolutely ridiculous. At tier 6 we have the Ognivoy making its appearance against the Mutsuki and the Farragut. And now I want to take a moment to talk about why gunboats are a myth. Anyone who has ever played American destroyers and actually made his way to the Farragut should know that the Farragut is a pile of shit. Why is it a pile of shit? Because all it has to rely on is its guns. 4.5 kilometer torpedoes at tier 6 are completely useless. The situations where you're actually going to use those torpedoes are so incredibly fringe, and most of the time you're going to die as a result of using them. So what you really want to do in the Farragut is just use your guns as much as possible. But you're never going to do as much damage as a cruiser or a battleship or just anyone else. The Farragut is a broadly hated ship, and the Ognivoy is pretty much a Farragut with even worse torpedoes. You still have exactly the same armament that the Gremyashi has at tier 5. You have a slightly better turret traverse time, and your guns are now ordered in 2 turrets of 2 guns each instead of the 4 distinct turrets. But that doesn't change anything about your damage, it just means that your groupings are a bit closer, but you're in a destroyer, your accuracy is not the problem. But now your torpedoes are completely worthless. You have a 7.7 kilometer detection range because you're huge and you're fat. You still have a rather bad turning circle and an awful rudder shift time for a destroyer. And the only thing you're really getting out of it is 4,000 extra hit points. Seriously, who the fuck is it at Wargaming that thinks 4,000 hit points on a destroyer is worth all of this crap? It just boggles my mind. I do not understand why this is a thing. The Kiev is the Soviet destroyer at tier 7. And now we finally have our pattern for the high tier. Yay! So the Russian destroyers have higher hit points than the other destroyers, because that's relevant to someone, I guess. And they have the highest top speed. At 42.9 knots, the Kiev is a damn fast ship. Faster than any of the other ships that are currently in the game, but not the fastest ship overall, because some of the other Russian destroyers are also really, really fast. But you pay for it in having a 690 meter turning circle. Ugh, that's so bad. That's cruiser levels of bad. And the same goes for the 3.8 second rudder shift time. It's just so horrible. 8.1 kilometers detection range. You are going to have to drive 4 kilometers while being detected until you can fire your torpedoes at the target. Seriously, what the fuck is this that I'm looking at? It has 2 sets of 5 torpedoes. Big deal, there's still only 4 kilometer range. Even the freaking Americans at this point have a 6.4 kilometer range. And anyone who's ever played the Mayhan knows that even 6.4 kilometer range at tier 7 is really garbage. And once again with the Mayhan, we have the exact same problem that we have with the Farragut, and it's incidentally also a problem that the Sim suffers from. You are now stuck in this gunboat role that tier 6 and 7 US destroyers suddenly have, but your guns are just so inconsequential. And the same thing goes for the Kiev. Ooh, it has 6 guns at tier 7. That's amazing. said nobody ever, because guess what else has 6 guns? The Auber at a tier earlier, and they're like double the size. I'm sorry, but 6 130mm guns at tier 7 are not impressive. They are not going to carry you anymore to 80-90,000 damage, and especially not when you're such a brick in the water. You're a huge target, you're really not that maneuverable, you're easy to spot, you're never going to fire your guns from stealth unless you're stationary in a smoke cloud. It's just... why? At tier 8 we have the Tashkent, which is not technically a destroyer, it's more labeled as a torpedo boat, which is also why it's so damn big. It has a few more hit points than the Benson and is a little bit faster than both the other destroyers. But it has a 730-meter turning circle and 4.8 second rudder shift time. Wow. Just... And it has an 8.5 kilometer detection range. There's nothing to say really. It's just not a good ship. And it's great. Now you have 8 kilometer range on your torpedoes, just like the Benson. And those who have played American destroyers know that when you get the Benson, you're like, oh my god, finally I have usable torpedoes. These torpedoes are just sort of playable. Yay! And it's sort of similar with the Tashkent, but then again, what I just said about the Tashkent, it has a horrible turning circle, a horrible rudder shift time, and a horrible detection range. And you're a huge target, and you still only have 16,400 hit points and practically no armor. There were some rumors floating around that the Soviet destroyers have like really good armor, which is bullshit because it's only the last one, and we'll get to that. But these destroyers up to tier 9 still only have like 16 to 25 millimeters of armor or whatever. It's not good enough against anything, it's just regular destroyer bullshit. At tier 9 the Soviets get the Udaloy. And when I was reading through the tree, I was really hoping for this one to take the same path that the Fletcher took. A lot of people really like the Fletcher, and the reason for that is it has actually really damn good torpedoes. 10.5 kilometers range is great. They're 66 knots fast and do over 19,000 damage apiece. If you compare them to the Kagero, you can see they're really not that much worse because range is over 10 kilometers. There's a lot of diminishing returns there. And what do we get after 8 underwhelming destroyers? We get the Khabarovsk. Ugh. So it has 22,500 hit points, and the reason for that is that the Khabarovsk is not really a destroyer anymore. It's what's called a destroyer leader. Now the reason for this is that all of these high-tier Russian destroyers are way past World War II. The Khabarovsk was like a design thing from like 58, it's really past World War II, and of course was never built. But in the game it does have sections of 50mm armor. Now this is of course crazy for a destroyer, because 50mm of armor, that's just a little bit less than what the... Because 50mm of armor, that's about comparable to what the Tenryu has at tier 3. And the Tenryu is of course a cruiser. Ooh. Now the thing is, of course, you're not at tier 3, you're at tier 10, so... You can of course make arguments that having 50mm of armor is still good because it reduces the damage you take from high explosive when you get hit in those 50mm zones. And that is true, sometimes you're not going to take full damage from those high explosive rounds. Sometimes you're going to take reduced damage from those high explosive rounds. But it's not like the entire ship is covered in 50mm of armor. It's just the gun casements, which does mean that the guns don't get knocked out as often, and then a few sections on the hull. But pretty much the entire superstructure and the rest of the ship is still practically unarmored. So I'm not entirely sure how effective this is going to be. Also, the Khabarovsk is the fastest ship in the game. As most of you history nerds probably know, the Shimakaze is a lot slower in the game than it was in real life. In real life it was an incredibly fast ship and one of the fastest ships during World War II. And so the Khabarovsk, because it's worse in pretty much every respect, now gets the kind of speed that the Shimakaze should have. But the trade-off for it, it gets a 760 meter turning circle and a 4.9 second rudder shift time. I mean, this doesn't look as bad as it did at tier 7, because now we're at tier 10, and the Shimakaze and gearing, they're not really all that maneuverable either. But it's still bad, and a 9 kilometer detection range. That is just so much. It's so goddamn much. And now the great flavor thing about this tier 10 Russian destroyer is that it has 8 guns. Ooh, it has 8 guns. The gearing only has 6. Isn't that crazy? Not really, because once again, I want to make it very clear that these are still only the Gremyashi guns. Okay, if you have played the Gremyashi, those guns are great at tier 5. But the gearing uses the Nicholas guns, and the Nicholas guns are fine at tier 5 as well. They're just no longer fine when you get to tier 10. And the same, I'm willing to bet, is true for the Gremyashi's guns. The Khabarovsk has 8 guns, but it has a far lower rate of fire than the Gearing. The Gearing only has 6 guns, but it has 20 rounds per minute rate of fire. That means that the Gearing fires 120 shots per minute, while the Khabarovsk fires 104. So in the grand scheme of things, having 8 guns really not that much of an advantage over what the Gearing brings. And the Torpedoes, interestingly enough, are also kind of the same torpedoes that the Gremyashi has, just with a slight upgrade. So what you're really getting at tier 10 is 2 Gremyashis strapped together. Now whether or not that is good enough for you, that's up to you to decide. For me... And unlike the Khabarovsk, the Gearing actually has usable torpedoes. The Gearing is not entirely reliant on its guns, which the Khabarovsk kind of is. So all in all, there's really nothing of value here. If you can show me about 10 to 15 replays of you doing about as much damage with your guns in the Farragut or the Mayhan as you would do in your cruisers at the same tiers, then I would be willing to say, okay, gunboats may be a thing. But let's be honest with ourselves. Gunboats don't work. They are not a thing. The only real gunboats currently in the game are the Farragut, the Sims, and the Mayhan, and they are without a doubt the 3 worst ships in that line. And anyone who has ever played these 3 ships knows that they are bad. They are not enjoyable. They don't really work. They require so much effort to do the same thing that you can do with other ships with far less effort. There is nothing waiting for you at the end of the Soviet tree. All of these ships work like the Farragut, the Mayhan, and the Sims. Every single destroyer in the game right now that has subpar torpedoes is regarded as a bad ship by the community. But then I get these fucking jokers telling me that gunboats are fantastic, and this is just the playstyle you have to adapt to when you play the Soviet destroyers. No, fuck you and fuck wargaming. These ships are garbage. I'm very comfortable being a pessimistic, cynical, skeptic donkey bastard. Alright guys, that is it for this quick evaluation. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing, and if you have any feedback, leave it in the comments. Next in World of Warships, we'll return to the replay contest so we can finally get that out of the door. But until then, I've been the CloakingDonkey, and I'll see you in another video.